welcome you all and thank you for taking the time to join us today. It's good to see some familiar names on the Zoom. My name is Zena Chewett and I'm the co-founder at Niche on Demand. We're excited to sponsor today in conversation with the legendary Terry Jervis in recognition of the UK Black History Month this October. As you know, Black History Month provides an opportunity to highlight the people who built the foundations on which we stand. One of our strategic partners, Richard Addison, calls these people Sherpas, people who help others to reach the summit of their careers, as you will hear today. Terry is a Sherpa in very many ways. Often hidden figures, they help us to connect the dots and remind us that we are all branches of the same babao tree, connected to powerful roots with stories that are varied but often intertwined. In the spirit of honoring these stories, Niche on Demand was born. Niche on Demand is a virtual global studio created for the futurists, the visionaries, the early adopters, and the historians among us. Sabrina Clark and I founded the Nod Studio in 2018 after meeting while working at Ernst & Young. Like most corporate environments, a place where a nod from another person, another Black person in the room tells you whether they're on the same page or not. Sabrina and I were tired of witnessing and hearing the challenges Black creatives have breaking into the industry, the exploitative practices, inequitable content negotiations, and the lack of access to capital. We trained as management consultants, so figured there must be another way to solve this age-old diversity challenge that did include writing another report, doing a study, or creating a training scheme. So over the last 3 years, we've been working with creatives to figure out what makes the most sense to enable storytelling and preserve Black history. Our vision is simple. We executive produce stories to serve our global niche audiences and create more content by us. We want Black creatives to have the majority ownership of their art. And we want a world where we get our stories told on demand without explanation or exploitation, giving Black global audiences the opportunity to be part of making more of the stories you say you want to hear. So earlier this week, we announced our new site, which has a crowdfunding element to it. So each quarter, we will feature 3 Black creatives who you can support to get their projects made with as little as $10. So there'll be creatives from anywhere around the world. If you like the project and what the talent has to say, you can support the idea to become a reality just by clicking the back campaign button and telling your friends. No long ting at all, just click the button. Sound good? If the answer is yes, then please go to nicheondemand.com and donate $10 or £10, depending on where you are in the world, and fund one of the creatives on Fund the Creative page. And also tell your friends and family and ask them to put their money where their mouth is too. So it is a little bit more effort than posting a Black square on Instagram, but we think it's worth it. If we think about the global creative industry being worth $2.25 trillion, and us having over 1 billion Black people across the globe, we can work together to economically empower our global community through access to capital so we can own our art and create future employment and legacies for the next generation. So before we get this party started and meet the man who put so many of us onto the hip hop artists we know today, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. So today's session will be recorded, as you heard, so please stay on mute until the Q&A section, but please feel free to chat in the chat rooms and share any reactions that you have. When we start the Q&A, please use the raise your hand icon that you'll see. And if you have any questions, please ask them by raising your hand. And then unmute your name, so unmute, and then go back onto mute when you finish. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our host for this session, a notable figure in the UK hip hop circuit. He's an MC, a producer, DJ, graffiti artist and b-boy, an original member of London-based Uprock Recordings, and he's been active in the scene since its development in the UK. Born Gus Modeste in West London and MCing since 1983, in 1987, his career took off when he became an MC called Def G and a rap group called the Power Lords. Over the last 30 years, he has produced tracks for Homeboy Sandman, Breeze, Ty, and stage performed with Redman, EPMD, and the Alcoholics, also DJing with some of the world's best scratch and club DJs. In 2021, he formed a new musical unit called Oxygen, who will be launching an album in early 2022. It gives me great pleasure to pass the mic to Gus Steve Austin Modeste and special guest, Terry Jervis.
Thank you very much. It's Jervis, how are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good, Gus.
Good, good, good. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the NOD, the Niche on Demand, with our special guest, Mr. Terry Jervis. So the way I want to kick this off, Terry, is to ask you on behalf of the listeners, who is Terry Jervis? Where are you from? Talk to us. Tell us.
Well, I don't know. First of all, are you seeing me or am I seeing you? I can't see you.
I can see you.
Okay. All right. I guess the question is, who is Terry Jervis? Right. Well, it's very hard for me to answer that, but I think by trade I'm a producer and director, and then a business entrepreneur. I've been in the entertainment business and the media business for close to 40 years. I've run record companies, television, radio, publishing, print publishing, and gosh, it's been a long road, but that's essentially what I do. Is I like to say, in Hollywood they used to call me Britain's best kept secret, and sometimes they used to call me the dream maker, meaning that, you know, if you can dream it, my job is to make it happen, whatever that is. So I guess that's my creative business.
That's the reason why I ask you who is Terry Jervis, because reading your biog, there's some amazing elements in there. And I'm like, who is this guy? Like you said, 40 years in the industry. Would you mind telling people how old you are?
No, I'm you know, I'll be 60 next year.
Don't look at me, my friend.
So, you know, I started in the media, you know, round about you know, in the official media like the BBC when I was about 21. But before that I was making my own films. You know, I was self-taught, and you know, even earlier when I started working at 12, I was just turning 13 actually. I started in comic books. But we can go into all that. And I was buying and selling records in the days when you know, you'd pay a lot of money for an import record from the US because you couldn't get a lot of the music here.
Yep, I know that deal. So with regards to you being this dude, this Hollywood sort of thing, as a Black British man, what obstacles? So for example, as an MC, all right, in the 80s, we were seen as second-rate rappers. You guys from London, you're second-rate. As a Black British male entrepreneur, businessman, how did you translate or deal with the Americans who were very, very boisterous, very big-chested? You know, they like puff up the chest quite a bit, hence puffy, puff up his chest a bit. How did you deal with that as a British man?
Do you know, the honest truth is I've never had problems with the American market. I think that I've been going to America since the 1970s. You know, as soon as I could make enough money from my comic books, I would fly over at about 14 years old and just go to the South Bronx, go down to Harlem, go into central Manhattan, and just buy stuff that I knew I could sell back in the UK. And, you know, that's even before rap music started. And so when we think about, you know, the artists in the past, and even artists today, whether you're talking about a Carla or Burna Boy or Wizkid or Steph London or you know, going back to even Miss Dynamite or Tiny Temper, you know, you know, whether you look at London Posse, We Papa Girl rappers, or Derek B, or I guess one of the closest ones really was Overlord X back in the day. And then you've got
like yourself.
Sorry?
A Hackney man like yourself.
Yeah, Hackney man like myself. Then you had the Cookie Crew. Then you had Moni Love. I think Moni Love, yeah, she was probably one of the earliest British rappers to break it in America. But as you know, she had to sound very American. And let me tell you the truth of what I think about that, right? We can go back into the history of it all, but just like today, why a lot of British rap, grime, drill, trap, you name it, in its modern incarnations, have a problem crossing over is because in the early days of rap, they didn't want to hear, Americans didn't want to hear you mimicking them. They wanted to hear something with authenticity and your story, right? Now, remember when I went to America, and I told Americans their own story because they didn't know a lot of this. And also I was telling them my story because they didn't even know at the time I was there and started going back and forth to America. They didn't even know about Black Britons. They didn't know we existed. So I broke America because I took ideas and my politics to America. And remember, this was a time when rap music, if we're talking specifically about rap music, was not played on MTV. In fact, black music per se was not played on MTV. And I was already putting black music on, you know, primetime television in the UK before even Radio 1 was playing significant amounts of black music. And then I was exporting those shows back to America, and Chuck D cites my Def Jam special, which was the one recorded at the Hammersmith Palais, as probably the most significant of the rap concerts. Because, you know, on that billing, we had Eric B. and Rakim, LL Cool J, Public Enemy.
August the 3rd, 1987.
Were you there?
I was there. Mate. I was there. That concert changed my life. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, so, you know, Chuck cites that. And in fact, if you look on the album, It Takes a Nation of Millions, I'm credited, and Dave Pierce, who was hosting it and doing the radio relay for me. So we had it simultaneously on BBC television and BBC radio, which was never done before. And also, you know, we used to do live links with WBLS in New York.
Yeah, I remember.
You know, so and that was all because of the broadcasting power of the BBC. But I was the man in charge, and that's what I wanted.
See, that explains a lot there with regards to the fact that when in your bio it says about launching some of these careers, and hearing what you've said makes pure sense. The whole Public Enemy stuff, you know, the show in '87. But what interests me is also people like Will Smith. Like, I know he was signed to Jive, and I know he spent a little time in London. Now, I believe that you were behind some of his work in the early days as well. Is that correct?
What I mean, back in the day, you got to remember you had labels like Jive Records, Tommy Boy, Sleeping Bag, even Chrysalis Records, which actually signed Moni Love first, I believe. Def Jam, you know, I could go on, but you know, a lot of these labels were small, independent labels, right? Even if you think about Island Records at the time, was a small independent label. And a lot of the rappers, if you talk about Will Smith was signed to Jive Records. Jive Records was based here in the UK, in Northwest London, as you know. And so Jive would pitch me, you know, because this was a new burgeoning form of music and they needed to break it on TV. And you got to remember, it was hard to break rap and hip hop on television, let alone radio, because even American radio was not playing hip hop, right? And so Jive said, look, you know, we've got this new artist, you know, what we want to do is we've got a low budget. And so I said, okay, I had a show called, I was a producer on a show called Ebony at the time, which was a news magazine current affairs show, actually. But
I remember that.
You remember that, right? But I really wanted to push the kind of music and entertainment section because, of course, that was integral to our economy, just like the hair care business. And we can go into that because of the close links between the hair care business, the black hair care business, and the black music business. People don't draw these links, but I'm going to draw a lot of these links for you tonight, if you'll allow me, because it's important. And this is why a lot of Black British artists do not succeed, because in terms of breaking the world market, because I think what's happened is we've lost the links. And a lot of those links actually came via either the hair business, or it came by the Black music independent business. Because you've got to remember, the majors were not touching the music at that time. And so I was flown to New York and I was sent to this warehouse. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, you know, it's freezing in here. And it was Jazzy Jeff, Will Smith, and the 2 tracks that I had to film the making of was Parents Don't Understand and Girls of the World Ain't Nothing But Trouble. And those 2 videos were shot in the same room. I mean, the budget was so cheap, they literally had one set at this side of the room and the other set that side of the room, and they'd run across to do the next video on that budget. And that was their first international exposure. And then, because remember, they were recorded at Jive. Jive had studios as well. It looked like an old school that had been converted. And so Jive was all there. And Will Smith actually lived in London. So I saw him on occasions, you know, over at Jive quite frequently in those days, because I think he'd be going back and forth and recording. And then, of course, as you know, when I launched Def 2 alongside Janet Street Porter, we brought Fresh Prince to the UK. And so it was my show, Behind the Beat, which incidentally was one of the biggest music shows in British television history. At its peak, I was getting 12 million viewers a week. And that was what was breaking all the Black artists. And incidentally, I was exporting the shows back to the US in different forms, because of course those artists couldn't even get on US television.
Right.
Which is why Chuck D cites the relationship, and Chuck even came to my house. And because I think Chuck and I share an interest in comic books, and we share an interest in politics. So, you know, that's the kind of background to that. But you know, that's it in a nutshell. So when we talk about why we don't break, I think you've got to look at a number of different factors, from elements of the songs or the raps or the beats to, you know, if you look at it, it's not impossible to break the US, because Junior Giscombe, who also appeared on my show, was the first Black Brit to get a Grammy, right? Or nominated for a Grammy. Then Soul to Soul. You know, you've had Maxi Priest, you've had Desiree, Gabrielle. You know, it's not like Black British artists can't do it. When we talk about
rap artists good there.
well, when we talk about hip hop and rap, you got to remember that it's like saying, well, how could reggae go international? People don't realize even the link between reggae and rap, or sound systems and rap and hip hop and the hip hop culture. And even if you look at, yeah, but you also have to look at even calypso. Calypso led to rap so, which means rapping, which is the form of the griot, you know, the old African tradition of being a storyteller, being a diplomat, being a newscaster, right? It's the oral tradition. And so while the ships went, they also took a lot of that culture in different forms, and New York was the melting pot. And I literally mean melting.
That's why you got people like Hurt coming involved in New York with his sound system theology and building what he built. But sort of leading on from that, obviously we've got history in the Caribbean. You know, from my understanding, you're from Jamaica, okay? Am I correct? Yeah. I'm from St. Lucia.
No. Yeah, Jamaica. My mother's from Jamaica. My father's from Guyana.
Oh, there you go. Soaking in blood straight away. You know, so those things there, and even back in the days, a lot of the soca artists and calypso artists, there was a lot coming from Jamaica as well, unknown to many people. So you can see the link there. But what I want to sort of talk about, moving on to a certain point, is that from this part of Will Smith and stuff, you became involved with Motown, and also you had people like Clarence Avant, now the Black Godfather, as he's quoted to be. You know, that is pressure in itself. How did that come about?
You know, I was talking to you about hair care product.
Yeah.
And you don't understand the link. Do you remember what Alexander O'Neill looked like?
What, Mr. Conk himself?
Did you see that? This is S-Curl, right? So I'm working with a company. They're my sponsors actually, Luster, and they make S-Curl, and then they make Pink. Was one of theirs, and then Pink Kids is another one of theirs. They've been in the business for 65 years. It's important we understand this connection. When I met Alexander O'Neill and Sherelle, remember they were on Taboo Records. That was owned by Clarence Avant. And Clarence needed to break Alexander O'Neill internationally, because I was also working with Luther Vandross. And Alexander O'Neill was a more kind of rugged, machismo-driven kind of character, because he's an ex-footballer, by the way, American footballer.
Yeah,
and he used to have his hair in this kind of smooth conch, you know, straightened and all of this. Now, you got to remember at this time, there were no black makeup artists in the BBC, no black hairstylists, and you're talking about Americans coming over who are used to that, because America was segregated still in its kind of music and television. Okay, hence you had black radio, you know, or you had BET being born out of that. So when they came here and they saw a black man in charge, they were actually stunned. Because I think for them, it was the reverse. It was a black man in charge with white technical crews and PAs and administrators and all of that. And I was young. I mean, I was, you know, still only like 26. 26, going 27. And so when they came over, the white technicians, this is the hair technicians, stylists, makeup artists, did not know how to do black people, didn't know how to do their hair. I didn't want them looking all gray, because the only thing they had to dab them down from the lights was like this white powder, which on white skin, but you know, on us, we look like a ghost. So this is why the black hair care companies like Luster was so important. Because it's a bit like saying Motown. Motown was really the preeminent Black heritage label because it'd been around for so long. And it's
was there
kind
a lot of pressure?
Sorry?
Was there a lot of pressure to succeed in that role with Motown?
Oh, yeah. Look,
What was the pressure?
if people think it's hard now, you got to remember at that time, you know, what it cost to do a live broadcast to America, what it cost. You know, there were no mobile phones. Video, home video was still new and in its infancy, right? So it wasn't like, even if you picked up a home video, you couldn't afford a home video camera. It was so expensive, right? So everything had to be planned out meticulously because of costs and budgets. And then you always had, remember, when I say I'm a Black man in charge, I'm pretty rare because I was 27 years old, I think the youngest in the BBC's history to run a department, right? Internationally as well. So the pressure was on to make the shows, hit the numbers, market it well. And look, at that time, BBC even had BBC Records. Okay, so when Alexander O'Neal broke and shot to the top of the charts, Clarence Avon demanded to see me. And it was through a lady called Karen Sherlock, who was actually at Motown. And Clarence had been dealing with them. This was before he became chairman of Motown.